So earlier this week, I made a video where I kind of made fun of Colin Cowherd and his whole Mayfield or the field segment. But then I thought it's kind of unfair for me to make fun of him without, doing the actual game, putting myself through that. And I felt like the only way to do this fair is for me to not have another Browns fan co-sign me or somebody who thinks Baker Mayfield's awesome or Oklahoma fan. No, I need to bring in somebody who I can count on to push back, who I can count on to disagree, who I can count on to not be in the Baker Mayfield crazy zone like people think Browns fans are. You know who that is? It's Tony. Tony, how you doing, man?
I got to tell you, listen, I don't know if that's true because there's a whole segment of people out there who believe that I'm the secret Browns fan, and I'm going to try really hard. I am pushing back on Baker today because I'm shedding the idea that I'm a secret Browns fan today. That's my role today.
And look, Tony has to spend this whole summer wondering or trying to figure out how the Steelers can get over this Cleveland Browns hump that they just seem to can't get over in the playoffs. We'll see if Big Ben can overcome the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs. He's never done it in his career. Those stats are lovely, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So, Tony, we have some rules for this game. We have some people that we're not even going to get in there with that conversation because I feel like, it'd be a little bit advanced. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we have three untouchables right now. This is, again, Quincy's going to be doing Mayfield or the field. So he's going to take a quarterback. I'm going to give him a quarterback. Yes, tell me whether you take Baker Mayfield or that quarterback. The untouchables here, the ones who, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on, Aaron Rodgers, MVP, Patrick Mahomes, and Tom Brady. I think those three, we can all say Baker Mayfield not touching those guys just yet.
Yeah, they're aliens. And I don't know if Baker Mayfield will ever touch those guys, and that's not a disrespectful thing towards Baker Mayfield. Another thing that we're doing, we're looking at this through this perspective. Would I swap this quarterback for Baker Mayfield? So we're still keeping intact the scheme that Kevin Stefanski runs, the offense that he's going to be in, and the supporting cast that he's going to have. Also that offensive line that people just think, magically makes everybody a good or bad quarterback.
Yeah.
We know we've heard trash O-line as an excuse for a ton of bad quarterback play this offseason. But we'll get to those guys when we get to them. Tony, anything else you want to add before we start?
Well, I did. I wanted to add here. I'm looking through this list now, and I did realize that we left one off because as we talk about quarterbacks that they haven't beaten in the playoffs, Chad Henne's not on this list, and right now Baker Mayfield 0-1 against Chad Henne in the playoffs. So I have to.
It's not against Chad Henne because he didn't start. You don't get the win if you don't start.
He got the save.
Technically, he got the save. He got the save. You know what I mean? But that's Case Keenum's problem. But I hope I never see Case Keenum on the field in a meaningful game in the Browns team anymore. But
all right, you ready to kick this thing off?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first quarterback on the list. He was just traded to the Indianapolis Colts. Let's go with Carson Wentz. You say Carson Wentz or Baker Mayfield?
I think Colin actually took Carson Wentz in his video. Yeah, I felt like he did. He was like, look, one bad season. I was like, oh, come on, man. No. This is obviously you take Baker Mayfield, right? Like the interceptions that Carson Wentz was throwing last season were like some of the worst interceptions I've ever seen in my life. We talked about while watching him because all the AFC North teams played him this year. Man is all-time reckless with the football while he's running, throwing in the pocket. You can have a quarterback that can put up great numbers, and Carson Wentz is certainly capable of putting up great numbers, but can he do it without the turnovers? That's the Jameis question about him, right? He's a lot like Jameis in that respect, except for he had the good season. Jameis didn't. So no way. Especially since Baker showed that this year he can keep the turnovers down.
Can I persuade you with this? No. Carson Wentz has a ring.
Yeah, and see, that's the other thing, right? They won the championship, the whole playoff run, the last two regular season games without him on the roster, which tells me maybe the 2016, 2017 Philadelphia Eagles, maybe they were a better team, easier team to play quarterback for than we thought, because that's a one season we thought he was an MVP candidate was that year. And, Nick Foles walked in with that same team and won the Super Bowl. So, I just don't know how Carson Wentz still is valued for draft picks at this point.
We'll see in Indy. Yeah, he's going to get reunited with Frank Reich there, who was quarterback coach. We'll see if that resurrects.
He's had the same coach his entire career, though. It's not like he's switching offenses. We'll see with Carson Wentz, man. We'll see.
All right, let's move on to another one. I think this is pretty easy. Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback for the Miami Dolphins right now. He's coming off a rookie season. Didn't look great. In fact, there were some talk earlier this offseason that the Dolphins may be looking to move on from Tua after just 1 year. Would you move on from Baker Mayfield for Tua?
Absolutely not. Baker is pretty much everything Tua is, except for he's a lot less athletic than Tua, but the arm strength, counts a lot in this league, and Tua doesn't have it. You look at that ball coming off his hands, it looks bad. Especially when you're looking at it compared to like Ryan Fitzpatrick's pop off the hand, it's not good, and it's not something that's going to last long in the league. Unfortunately for Tua, I think he either has to go through a whole mechanical rework or, he has to get a stronger arm. And I don't think any of those two things are coming.
It was certainly a tough rookie year for Tua. And again, there's just a sample size problem here where we've seen so much of Baker. We've seen him play well for really, 2 seasons, rookie year and last season. Tua, we haven't seen it yet, but there's still time for him. All right, let's move on here. We'll go with Carolina Panthers quarterback Teddy Bridgewater versus Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, if anybody ever takes Teddy Bridgewater over Baker Mayfield, that's a disqualifying opinion, right? Like no. I like Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's a solid backup. I think he's probably one of the best backups in the league. When you put him at starter, you start to see he's a lot like Brian Hoyer. Those couple years where Brian Hoyer was like a fringe starter, he has some issues when it comes to arm strength. He has some issues when it comes to decision making. You look at some of the issues in Carolina where he didn't want to respect the play calls that were called on the field. Like he's somebody who can do that. Like, nah, these are the issues you run in with Teddy Bridgewater. That's why I would not take Teddy. I don't think that needs that much explaining.
No, yeah, and I don't think the Carolina Panthers want Teddy Bridgewater right now. I think they're very much in the market for a quarterback in this upcoming draft, so I don't blame you on that one. All right, move on again here. We'll go to New Orleans, but not Drew Brees. We'll go Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill himself.
All right, I'm not going to lie. I put this on the list just so I could talk about Taysom Hill, because Taysom Hill gets paid $16 million right now for a team that's over the cap $76 million. And nobody's talking about, hey, they're going to cut Taysom Hill, right? Like, nobody is talking about that. They still think Taysom Hill is the future out there. He's 30 years old and he runs a lot. I don't understand why people are out here acting like Taysom Hill. But then I saw on Engraven's video that somebody said that, the Ravens shouldn't really do anything with Trace McSorley because he's easily a top 20 quarterback. And then I understood it. People get wild sometimes about some of these quarterbacks. He said it's hard to name. I remember Engraven put the tweet up. You can go follow Engraven and see it. But this guy said it's hard to name 20 quarterbacks that are better than Trace McSorley. I was like, dude, I can name 20 quarterbacks out of Penn State that are better than Trace McSorley. But yeah, that's a hard take. But yeah, Taysom Hill, I look, congratulations to him, right? Because he found a way to make $16 million from being a third string quarterback. But come on, man. Like, he's not, the Saints aren't going to the playoffs if they start him 16 games next year.
Well, technically he was the backup, right? He did start in front of Jameis those couple games. So you got to give him some credit for that. And I will say, in an offense where you completely change it around and you go to like a, Lamar style of offense of run, and you're going to use Taysom that way. Maybe he could, he could be like he's
only good when you're not expecting him. Like that's even when how many times have the Saints been in the red zone this year? You're watching the Saints and you're like, stop going to the Taysom Hill package. You know what I mean? Like it was not that effective. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially when you're playing in division. Look what happened against the Bucs in the playoffs when they tried to go to that. It's just when you're expecting it, it's not really useful. And that's the thing with Taysom Hill. You have to not expect for him to be useful. And why would you pay $16 million a year for somebody who has to catch you off guard to be effective? I don't know, but something's in the water down there in New Orleans.
No, and the other thing, is why are you taking Drew Brees? You're taking Drew Brees off the field to put Taysom Hill on the field. That's and like much like we're talking about here with this conversation. Would I take Baker Mayfield off the field to put Taysom
run
Hill on
the ball when you got Alvin Kamara?
No,
you have a better option to run the ball with.
All right, let's get through this next one quickly. Ben Roethlisberger versus Baker Mayfield. Go ahead.
Yeah. You know what's happening right here. Big Ben's done. Like, he might not be done, but his years of being like that fringe top 15, top 10, sometimes he can squeeze in there in the top 5 if he has the right pieces around him. Yeah, those are done, right? I think Ben gave you his absolute best at the beginning of 2020 and then gave you his absolute worst. And I think if he comes back, you'll see both. I think you'll see good men, you'll see bad men, but they'll balance each other out. And I think, I would just rather take Baker at that point, right? Because the bad men, Like it gets bad sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, right now, yeah. I mean, look, this would have been a much more interesting conversation if it were had like week 8 or 9 in the regular season. But yeah, if you're saying right now, like watching Ben Roethlisberger down the stretch, that you would take him over what Baker Mayfield is showing right now. And again, we're keeping Kevin Stefanski in this conversation, right? So it's Baker Mayfield
play action with Big Ben.
Yeah, in Stefanski's system, right? Yeah, I mean, first of all, Ben Roethlisberger would throw a fit. And Baker Mayfield is yeah. I mean, he's not ideal, but he's a very good quarterback in that situation. All right, let's go with Lamar Jackson. We'll keep it in the AFC North. Let's go with former MVP winner Lamar Jackson.
See, the former MVP, like it makes it hard. But if we're talking about fit in Kevin Stefanski's system, some real conversations need to be had, right? Because this is not let's reconstruct the system for Lamar Jackson. Let's just swap places. Lamar for Baker Mayfield. Is Lamar, you have to ask yourself this, is Lamar the same type of passer on the passes you need to be effective in this offense that Baker Mayfield is? I don't think the answer is yes. I just don't. I don't think he throws well deep, and he doesn't do deep on the run. Like he has his highlights, but he doesn't do deep on the run consistently well. And those are the two things that Baker does well in this offense. You can talk about his running ability, and his running ability would still have some use, right? Because you can see a play action boot with him out there. He could probably shake somebody and make a play. Like Lamar would be good in this offense. I just think Baker's ceiling is a little bit higher in this offense than Lamar's would. Now, if they're both in like optimal offenses, Lamar has more just like talent and ability than Baker Mayfield when it comes to like his athleticism. But if we're just talking about fit in Kevin Stefanski's offense, and Raven fans, I know y'all going to hear this. Y'all going to write y'all comment. You're going to write your little book in the comment section. But if you talk about fit in the offense, I do think the answer is Baker Mayfield. Because, again, this is an offense that kind of relies on the quarterback having to be able to turn his back through the play action stuff consistently and throw downfield with accuracy. And Lamar kind of struggles in those areas. Another area where Lamar struggles, where Baker doesn't, is passing on 3rd and plus downs, right? Like 3rd and longs. That's where Baker's been kind of really good at this season. He's gotten a lot of those. Lamar Jackson, if it's out of distance for him to run, which is rare, right? For him to be able to, if he can't run it, he has an issue sometimes trying to hit those intermediate throws. And, you know, we saw this happen in the playoffs where Baker was able to get his team back into the game because of his ability to just work down the field as a passer, where Lamar, he has his issues in that area. Not saying he's a bad passer, but I think if you're looking at an offense that prioritizes the quarterback's passing ability, you have to go with the better passer. And I think Baker Mayfield is a better passer.
Yeah. And well, I will say though, like you are limiting, I think you're limiting it a little bit in trying to say that, you know, you have to keep this within Stefanski's offense. Because I think if you let Stefanski build an offense around Lamar Jackson.
Oh yeah, that was fire. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a much different conversation. And Lamar wins.
To have too is also like, would that be like, I think that would be like, if you let Lamar just do Lamar, he might be better for the next 2 years, but who's going to be better for the next, like, you know, the long-term part, right? That's another question that you have to add in there, and another factor. Like, yeah, will Lamar be better? But we had this conversation last week. Well, not last week, but the other day about, you know, how much does like how good do you need your quarterback to play to actually have it be effective? How much does that turn into something that kind of plagues you because you have to pay him so much money? And I think all of those things kind of factor in for me. And that's why I would make that choice.
Yeah.
To keep Baker instead of Lamar. But I totally understand if somebody wants to go the other way with it. It's just, I think for the system and on long-term viability, I think Baker's probably going to get, well, I would hope. This is, you can't guarantee on anybody, but I would hope Baker, his game can age a little bit more gracefully than what Lamar's is right now, especially if Lamar does not develop more as a passer.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we are at with Baker Mayfield, where we were with Lamar Jackson coming into the season, right? Which is, you know, Lamar was coming off an MVP year, but he had a huge question mark about, hey, what happened there at the end? I mean, that, you know, the offense in that final game was just, you know, a complete shell of itself. And, you know, you went into this year and those questions continue to be asked in the regular season. I think next year, if teams start to scheme around Stefanski's offense and Baker starts to have some of those struggles, I think we're going to have some similar questions about Baker. Going back to this, I think, you know, if you just look at what, I mean, if you had Stefanski run like an imitation version of what Lamar Jackson runs and what John Harbaugh designed, I think the Browns offense is perfect for what Lamar needs around him. Great offensive line, great running back talent, great tight end talent. And then, hey, you know what? Cleveland's wide receivers, just a little bit better than what they have in Baltimore right
And to
now.
be fair, like Baker Mayfield has a pretty good situation. Like this is weird to say in Cleveland, but like he probably has like the Browns are probably like a top 8 destination if you're a quarterback because literally everything's around you, right? The offensive line is top tier, pass and run blocking. The wide receivers are good. Your tight ends are just so underutilized, but they're pretty good too. It's just you have a lot there. So Baker is kind of like privileged in that way where he does have a lot around him.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, the thing I would point to is, like, the stuff where you want to worry about him getting figured out, that went away towards the end of the season where you saw him kind of do a lot more out of those empty and shotgun sets that he wasn't producing out early. That kind of showed me he took a step in the system that he doesn't have to rely on the play action to be productive. But again, that's me. I have a Brown shirt on. Y'all knew I was going to go with that one.
I think the questions we're going to have about Baker Mayfield, it's the same about Lamar, right? We knew after Lamar won MVP, Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback. The question is, how far up the scale does he go? I think the same question now with Baker, right? The question coming into this year with Baker was, is he a good quarterback? Are we sure about Baker Mayfield? He answered that question, yes, and made almost emphatically yes, because of how well the Browns did. The fact that they nearly upset the Chiefs in that game. And he certainly was not a disaster at Baker in that last game. But the question now is, okay, you're a good quarterback. How good? How far up? If we're putting him in top 10, how far up the top 10? So let's stay in the AFC North. Let's go with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, for what you've seen, look, you were very high on Joe Burrow in his rookie year. This is, one of the best prospects we've ever seen come out of the NFL draft. And certainly he didn't do much in his rookie year, even with not a lot around him, especially on the offensive line, to prove anybody wrong there. So Baker Mayfield versus Joe Burrow.
All right. I like Joe Burrow a lot, but we're talking about fit. And one of the things with Joe Burrow that's an issue is arm strength. And we're going to get to this with another quarterback that I know I'm about to catch hell in the comment section for. But when it comes to fit, Joe Burrow playing on the lake where, Baker played in 40-mile-per-hour winds, something crazy like that a couple of times this season, right? Yeah. Joe Burrow in that situation, Baker Mayfield has a very strong arm. Like we don't talk about it in the context of how strong his arm is because we're living in a world that has like aliens like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in it who just throw the ball like we've never seen. But Baker Mayfield is in not that conversation of freakish arm strength, but he has, if those guys didn't exist like normal NFL, he would have one of the strongest arms in the NFL. He has the longest in-air pass attempt this year. Now, he had like 2 hops and a skip to get that ball out there, but it still went 75 yards in the air. So he has very good arm strength, very good sip on the ball that helps him when it gets windy in Cleveland. When it gets windy in Cincinnati, like towards the end of the season, which he didn't play towards the end of the season, but, once the later part of the year for him, it started to get kind of dicey with him, right, with his arm strength. I worry about that being an issue in an offense that kind of requires a lot of downfield attacking. And Baker Mayfield was like in the top 5 of completed air yards per attempt, which that's what it requires. Joe Burrow was not, even when he was playing. He's a guy who kind of relies on the short attempts. Now, could you build an offense around Joe Burrow that would be very good in Cleveland? Yeah, you could. But for now, I'm going to take Baker because I feel like his fit with Stefanski and what you have around him can hit a higher ceiling than how you would have to kind of move things around to fit Joe Burrow's strength and to kind of adjust to Joe Burrow's weaknesses, which is his arm strength.
His arm strength,
yeah. Not saying he's a bad quarterback or anything, but I'm saying the arm strength stuff, that's going to come up in the AFC North where nobody plays in the dome and everybody plays next to a lake. That's my biggest concern with him, and that's why I take Mayfield.
I'm with you on that one. I will say Burrow has, I know you're going to disagree with me on this one, but Burrow is a guy where the locker room is, immediately rallied around Joe Burrow from the word go. We heard from Ace on AFC North Talk this idea that the locker room was coming apart and that they hated the coaching staff. Every time we heard a player talk about the locker room, they always talk about how much they love Joe Burrow. That started in training camp, that went through. Now, look, not to say that the locker room is a problem for Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield has certainly been an off the field problem at times in his career. Joe Burrow hasn't had enough time yet, but that aspect of it, Baker Mayfield is a negative, and I put Joe Burrow as a positive. But as you said, that's an intangible BS thing that Baker Mayfield can get over easily, and it wasn't an issue whatsoever last year. What is going to be an issue on the field? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's two different lanes to that though. Like, yeah, if you're talking about like the whole like he was chirping back with the media thing and that kind of being an added distraction, yeah, then like that was an issue. He corrected that issue this season. He didn't really do that at points where he would have done it last year. But if you talk about just like buy-in from the locker room, I'll always point to this, and this is something that seems to be true when you hear his teammates talk about him when it comes to Baker Mayfield, is that the fact that things went so bad in 2019. After all that hype they had in the offseason, and nobody turned to Baker as bad of a season as he was having and pointed their finger at him, I think that shows a lot of the respect that he has in that locker room. And when you hear guys talk about him, it's a similar situation to Joe Burrow. Now, the reason I don't take these stories too deeply is because, like, Hugh Jackson's come in there when he was like, we went to Baker's pro day and he did, and they did, and that just told me he was the number one guy. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, that's the process. So like, I always have trouble buying into stuff like that because it can get real goofy real quick. But, no disrespect to Joe Burrow's ability as a leader. We'll see right now, because when that season got tumultuous in Cincinnati, he wasn't in the locker room. He didn't have to be there. So Baker has had to go through, call 2019 what you want. It was tumultuous, right? And it was a national dumpster fire. So I would say Baker, he has the stripes right now to prove that he's gone through that leadership without losing his team. We'll see what happens with Joe Burrow. I think he will be able to do the same thing, but we'll see.
Yeah, but bro, I do want to touch on you touched on the arm strength thing. I mean, I think that might be a real issue. Watching him against Pittsburgh, that was a eye opener for me. The arm strength issue, I think, is a real thing with Burrow. It's something he's going to have to overcome at this level. All right, couple easy ones for you. Couple layups. Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, Cam's old. Cam's old. I love Cam, but Cam's old. He's done. It looks bad. Yeah,
if you can't make it work with Bill Belichick, it's not a great sign. Not a great sign. All right, Jared Goff versus Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I would definitely take Baker Mayfield over Jared Goff. There's really no explanation for that needed.
Yeah, the Rams don't want him, and I'm sure
they put a pick in his pocket to send him to Detroit. They don't view him as an asset.
Nope. All right, another interesting one here. Another rookie, Justin Herbert versus Baker Mayfield.
All right, man. I'm not the biggest fan of Justin Herbert. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming out in the draft. When I watch him, he looks so good, right? But it's so volatile, the things that he's doing well in LA, that the Browns fan in me knows that there's going to be another shoe that drops with this dude. But that's not really tangible evidence on why I would take Baker Mayfield over him. I just don't think there's enough of a sample size for him. And he does things well. I think he would be well in Kevin Stefanski's system if he gets a good, I think now that he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I just don't know if he's going to maintain that level of play that he had his rookie year. Like, I think that might be one of those situations where a guy might, have close to his peak in his rookie year, because again, like the deep balls, the 50-50 ball success he was having down there in with the Chargers, it just does not seem sustainable. It's very volatile production, but again, people said the same thing with Patrick Mahomes, but my theory with that is that there's one Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah. Maybe there's two now. See, I'll disagree with you on this one. I will go with Herbert for these reasons. The fact that he was able to do so well, again, 7 wins on a team that just wasn't very good outside of really him, and the fact that he did it with a coaching staff that, again, got fired right after the season was over. And by the way, Anthony Lynn, just again, not a great game manager, put that team in positions to lose over and over again. They didn't have, they had basically no semblance of a running game. Eckler, not the guy. Josh Kelly, not the guy. But he was able to go in this system in year one when they weren't even planning on starting him and going to win 7 games. But that was really impressive. The numbers he put up were really good. And look, I understand that there's a lot of hype about Baker Mayfield right now in Cleveland. But the thing about Baker is he's in the best situation he's ever been in, right? He's got Stefanski. He's got a great running game. He's got reliable wide receivers. Herbert had none of that. He had the exact opposite. He had a coaching staff that was on its way out, no running game whatsoever. I mean, he had decent wide receivers there, but I think if you put him in a system with a guy like Stefanski, I think Herbert could be maybe even better than Mayfield. So I'll go with Herbert on this one.
My one counterpunch to that would be, yes, he did do all those things in a bad situation with the coaching staff that got fired. Let's not forget, he broke the rookie touchdown record this year. Baker broke the rookie touchdown record in his rookie year
right.
with a very similar terrible situation. You look at that offensive line he was playing around. You look at the guys that were on that team. Hugh Jackson was coaching half the season, and then it was Freddie Kitchens and Greg Williams, Mr. Zero Blitz, running the team operations. I think there's an argument to be made there that Baker has kind of not on the same level, right? Because I do think if you put both their rookie years together, Herbert had a better rookie year, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah,
we'll see
it's a bit like if you took. I know it's gonna be a weird comparison, but just take Baker Mayfield today versus Baker Mayfield's rookie year. You would rather have the Baker Mayfield that existed, that like what we thought of Baker Mayfield after his rookie year. I think you'd rather have him than the guy you have today because of what we saw 2 years ago, right? Baker Mayfield as rookie year was like, this guy is, remember PFF was like, this is the most accurate quarterback most accurate quarterback prospect we've ever seen, right? That was what PFF was saying after his rookie year. I think that's with Herbert. You see he's in a bad situation. Oh my goodness, what could this guy do today? It is a lot of hype. I agree with you on that, but you know me, I'm Mr. Hype. I'm going to buy into it. So I'll take Justin Herbert.
He just sees Big Ben when he looks at Justin Herbert.
All right. This one. Wow, this is an interesting one because I think this is another one that may get the comments going. Matt Stafford traded from the Lions to the LA Rams. This is Stafford could be the Baker Mayfield of the situation. He goes to a much better coach, a much more stable situation. Can he pull a Baker Mayfield and resurrect his career? But who would you have right now, Stafford versus Mayfield?
First off, with Matt Stafford, I've never heard so many people make so many reasons on why a dude who's been in the league 12 years just has not reached his peak with the Lions. So I get it. The Lions aren't necessarily the greatest franchise on planet Earth, but they have supported this man with good offensive talent throughout his tenure there, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. Now, as far as him or Baker Mayfield, I would take Baker Mayfield because they're pretty much the same quarterback now, except for Baker's just younger. Mm-hmm. Strong arm, kind of mobile, really the gutsy kind of they're essentially kind of close profiles when it comes to quarterback play. Baker's just younger. And I think Matt Stafford back in we can forget Matt Stafford's accuracy coming out of college was insane, just like Baker's was. So I think they're pretty parallel as far as prospects are. Just one's in his 12th year, looking like he's probably going to be on his way out soon. Within the next 5 years. Baker's just younger.
So you're taking Baker?
I'm taking Baker on that one.
All right. I would also take Baker just for the fact that he's younger. I mean, again, if we're talking about moving Stafford over to a system, I get, like you said, all the negatives, positives are the same between these two guys, but Baker's just younger and has more upside. So in that case, I would just take Baker in this one. But I don't think it's like a huge difference in talent between the two right now at this point. But
the more I think about it, though, they're remarkably similar profiles.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
all right. Let's get to another young quarterback, another interesting prospect here from Arizona, teammates with JJ Watt now. Kyler Murray. In fact, JJ Watt chose the Arizona Cardinals. He said, because I believe in you. And you being Kyler Murray. The Browns were in that spot. So JJ Watt saying he would take Kyler Murray over Baker Mayfield. Would you?
Yes, I think JJ Watt, he watched Deshaun Watson play there in Houston, and he's like, you know what? I like quarterbacks who give defensive ends more sacks than is necessary. So, he went to go play with Kyler Murray. But the sacks are a real thing, right, with Kyler Murray. I'm just looking at his, last 6 games of the season. This man took 14 sacks in 6 games.
Not great, not ideal.
Not great, right? Then the thing with Kyler Murray is that this is the second season in a row where he has started off and you're like, oh my God, he's going to win the MVP. He's going to be close to it. And then it peters out so bad at the end. Not terrible, right? He's a good quarterback. Mm-hmm. But, you look at 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for a guy who started off the season as hot as he did. It's just not where you expected him to be. Now, would I take him over Baker Mayfield? There's an argument, right? But I just don't like his strengths, his weaknesses with Stefanski as much. Now we can talk about theoretically you could have Stefanski craft something up for Kyler Murray. But Kyler Murray is one of the few cases where I watch him play and I feel like the height's been an issue. And I feel like that's a lot of the reasons, not why he throws interceptions or gets tipped balls, but why he takes so many sacks is because the height and weight is just not where it needs to be with him. Again, there's a real good argument for Kyler Murray here.
This is a close one. This is very close.
I'm going to take Baker because I just know more about what he's going to do consistently and produce at the quarterback position and what you need to put around him than Kyler. I just don't. It seems kind of volatile with Kyler. Either it's really good or either it's like bad with him, and you don't know what you're getting in that. Yeah. And also, I think, when it mattered the most, I felt like Baker played his best football this season. When it mattered the most for Arizona, I don't think Kyler put his best foot forward. So, when you're talking about teams that are trying to contend, I'm going to put those things, consider those things heavily. And that's why I would take Baker over Kyler.
Yeah. Looking at that, Baker had, Kyler had that 3-game stretch midseason. That was really what took Arizona out of the playoff race altogether. The losses to Seattle, New England, and LA back to back. Kyler, I guess, certainly didn't have the best numbers in those games. This is a tough one for me. I mean, this is like a 50-50. I know we talked about pushing before the show. I might actually push on this one because I think the thing about this one is, Kyler's got the X factor of being a great runner, right? And when we're seeing at the quarterback position how much that matters, the mobility matters. And yes, Kyler will escape some clean pockets at times, but he can make things happen on the run. And I think, look, Baker can too, but Kyler's on another level.
Yeah, we're not going to even compare them as runners. Right. That would be ridiculous. Yeah. My one thing with Kyler's ability to run is like, yes, it's great to have a quarterback who can run, but what you've seen is that sometimes just because your quarterback can run doesn't mean that that's going to be helpful for your offense, just because that means they could take more sacks, right? Some offenses would be better with not with Joe Flacco, but with a guy with the mindset of Joe Flacco, to where he barely gets sacked because, he just gets rid of the ball quickly. And I think that kind of adds to why the Cardinals were so volatile this season, is because he takes so many sacks, he puts you in so many bad situations, and Cliff Kingsbury is just not a good coach, in my opinion.
Ooh, that's a hot take.
Oh yeah, I do. Come on, man. He had Patrick Mahomes, all the quarterbacks they say he had in college, and he went 500 at Texas A&M with Texas Tech, with all of those guys. Did not really have special offenses in the Big 12.
Right, but he was,
comes to Arizona. It comes to Arizona, has Kyler Murray, has all, exactly what he wants, and then look, what does he do? Still the same old Cliff Kingsbury, where he has all this talent. We have DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, and what he go? 8-8, just like Texas Tech. This is what Cliff Kingsbury does. He goes 8-8 because that's what his offense has always done. He's never been that good. And like, his biggest claim to fame is he was an offensive coordinator for Johnny Football, which is like, okay, yeah, that's not good. He didn't really play the offense at Texas A&M. But and then my rant about Cliff Kingsbury aside, I didn't know that was a hot take, but the sacks, right? Like, Lamar does not take a ton of sacks. Well, he started to this season, but before, when he had his MVP season, he was running without taking those sacks, and that's super productive. But if you're taking 14 sacks in 6 games, some of that run production is just being offset by you being behind the sticks all the time, and that becomes an issue.
I will say this about his sack. I mean, looking at the numbers right here, I mean, I know that obviously the sack numbers, Kyler took 27. Baker took 26, but Kyler did throw the ball more. So as a percentage of dropbacks, Baker actually took more sacks than Kyler Murray. I mean, some of this is just a product of throwing the ball more. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, certainly, I think it is the volatility index of Kyler Murray is certainly higher than it is for Baker Mayfield. And as you look at those last 8 games of the season that Baker put up versus the last 8 games that Kyler put up, no doubt about it, Baker's a better quarterback. I'll take Kyler in this one. Again, I think I value the running ability there, the dynamism over what Baker Mayfield provides as a pure passer. All right, let's keep going here. Let me get back to my notes. Oh, my boy Matt Ryan. You don't know about the Matt Ryan thing. On Locked On Steelers, Matt Ryan was a meme because I once said Matt Ryan's a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger. But how do you feel about Matt Ryan versus Baker Mayfield?
I mean, Matt Ryan's somebody who's proved he could do very well in the same system that Baker Mayfield's in. He's just older now, and he just, I don't know what it is. I'll be honest with you, I don't watch a lot of Matt Ryan, so I'm just going to take Baker Mayfield on this one because Baker's younger. Matt Ryan's older. Matt Ryan's a good quarterback. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Matt Ryan or nothing, but I think his best years are behind him.
Yep. Yeah. 2 years ago, this would have been a much more interesting conversation. This year, it is not an interesting conversation. Baker right now.
This would be the same level of conversation 2 years ago. This Ryan Tannehill one's going to be. but now
That's
it's
right.
the same.
All right, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, who the Vikings came out and said, "Hey, we are sticking. This is our guy." Would he be the guy in Cleveland?
Nah. All right, so I like Kirk Cousins. Like, I feel like Kirk Cousins takes a bad rap, right? Because everybody looks at Kirk Cousins, sees that contract, go, oh my God, he's a product of his free agency, right? Like that, people kind of give him a lot of flack. He's put up good seasons consistently. He's been a good quarterback, a guy who can get you 4,000 yards. Like, he's not been terrible. But I will say this. When he was in Minnesota with a team whose offensive profile was very similar to what Baker Mayfield had with the same offensive coordinator, that was not an offense that you feared with Kirk Cousins there. It was an offense that kind of underperformed, especially at the beginning parts of the season, but towards the end, it did kind of perform up to the numbers when they had Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, like you can argue better wide receivers than what Baker Mayfield had because Odell was out for most of the season for the Browns. And still had Dalvin Cook, pretty similar situation, honestly, what Cleveland had. Never got to that point to where that offense was really considered one of the best offenses in the NFL. Baker, in a similar situation, did get the offense to that point to where you're like, this is one of the best offenses in football. Consistently over 30 points, could put up 45 on one of the best defenses in football, right, Tony? How many points did they put up against one of the best defenses in football? Now,
some of
that was turnover. No, just but yeah. That's why I would go with Baker over Kirk. No disrespect to Kirk. I feel like Kirk takes a lot of flack. But yeah, he's not. I'm not taking him over Baker.
So Stefanski. Now this is an interesting one, right? Because Stefanski was the Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator in 2019. Yep. So we can straight up compare these two quarterbacks. System, not changing the system out, exactly the same system. I got some interesting numbers here because I was going to go Baker, but then I started looking at this. Kirk Cousins, higher completion percentage, 69% completion percentage to Baker Mayfield's 62. Yep. Yeah. Same touchdowns, 26 touchdowns, but Baker threw 8 interceptions. Kirk Cousins threw just 6 in his. I think I might have to go Kirk Cousins here.
My thing is like, yeah, if you look at cumulative numbers, you can get to that conclusion very easily. And Kirk does cumulative numbers pretty well. Like I pointed that out. He does like if you look at his career, he does cumulative numbers pretty well. If you look at just points where Baker puts up games like 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 22 straight completions, does stuff where he just kind of takes over games. I don't think you watch Kirk Cousins and watch him take over games. I think that's the one X factor that has me leaning towards Baker is that while Kirk can put up similar numbers, Baker has shown in games or in fourth quarter situations that he could take over a game and get you back in it, where Kirk doesn't necessarily have the same track record in those areas.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up the EPA per play of Baker versus Kirk for last year because I'm with you. These raw number stuff, you just go by yards, right? We had this whole argument on AFC North talk about Leonard Fournette, right? Whether that was just a raw yards thing or whether or not he's actually a good player. So I'm trying to pull up Kirk Cousins and see what they were like exactly the same. Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield were basically within like a percentage point of each other as far as the two. So, all right, I'll go Baker because he's got the upside. You know who Kirk Cousins is. Kirk Cousins has to be in the exact right situation. Stefanski got the best we'll ever see out of Kirk Cousins. Again, for Baker, it's still early in his career. The question is, what was 2019 and was 2020 the real Baker Mayfield? So I will take Baker on that one. That's actually closer than I thought it would be. All right, Derek Carr. It's another one that's this is a weird one. Derek Carr versus Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, this is a weird one because like Derek Carr is good, but nobody talks about Derek Carr in any revered way. Yeah. He's kind of like he's kind of like Matt Stafford in that way where like he's been good for a while, but it's like nobody really like it doesn't even seem like the Raiders really want him like that, right? Because they're in the rumors to trade for Deshaun Watson. Derek Carr's issue from just the outside looking in seems like it's consistency, right? Like there's been a couple of times, like I think in 2014 he had the one really good season, but other than that, there's been like, hey, there's going to be great Derek Carr, and there's going to be times where you're like, hey, can Marcus Mariota play more snaps? And that kind of is issue with him. Now, you can argue that he's not in the best offense for what his talents are, right? This guy as talented as him, as much arm strength as he has, probably shouldn't be in an old school West Coast pop offense that John Gruden has him in. That's a more fit for Deshaun Watson, actually, somebody who doesn't have the same arm strength, but mobility and ability to kind of improvise. And he's fast too. He runs like a 4.7. He hates running though. He's the weirdest prospect I've ever seen. He's like a Madden prospect where he's like, why does he have 92 speed, but he's a pocket passer? But yeah, I would take Baker over him just because I've just seen more Baker games than Derek Carr games. And I'm pretty sure if Raider fans like, oh, well, do you put these splits and numbers up together? I just feel like, and this is not a great reason for have a take. I just feel like Baker, I feel like Baker can win you and get you more out tough third downs than Derek Carr can, but who knows?
No, listen,
I haven't watched enough Derek Carr to have
it. As you're talking, I'm like trying to come up with, all right, what are my reasons for taking Baker over Derek, or what are my reasons for taking Derek Carr over Baker Mayfield? You know the meme where it's like, tell me the difference between these two photos. They're the same picture. That's my feeling on Derek Carr and Baker. Like they're the same. I have every opinion I have about Derek Carr. I also have that opinion about Baker Mayfield and vice versa. So you know what, Quincy, this is gonna be our first push. I'm pushing on this one. So they're the same guy. They're exactly the same guy. All right, let's move on here. We'll go Dak Prescott coming off of the injury, but Dak Prescott looked very good. Talk about a guy in the right situation. Kellen Moore? Is that his name?
Kellen Moore.
Yeah, Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator now in Dallas, getting the best we've ever seen out of Dak Prescott. Would you take Dak over Baker Mayfield?
No, I would take Dak over Baker. I would take Dak. I think Dak does a lot of what you need Baker to do. He's just more experienced, similar age, doesn't have the arm strength that Baker has, but has enough and makes up for it with his mobility and his just size in order to kind of break out his sacks and stuff. I like Dak a lot. I think Dak's probably closer to that top 5 conversation than we want to admit, or that Jerry Jones wants to admit, especially if he has a clean pocket around him, which he would have in Cleveland. I would Dak right now probably at a better point in his development than Baker Mayfield is right now, and still has plenty of good years behind him. Now, I know he broke his leg last year, but I'm not worried about that affecting his game at all, because I like Dak a lot. So I would go Dak here.
I'm with you. I think Dak looked like he was on his pace to be a top 5 quarterback for sure in the 2020 season before he had the injury. So I'm going to go Dak here easily. All right, we'll go to another one. That's this again. We're getting these top guys now. Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills. Brian Daboll made him look like a completely different guy this year. He got Stephon Diggs. So he finally got someone to throw the ball to. Where are you going with Josh Allen?
Was it Brian that made him look better, or was it the dude he worked with in the offseason that actually fixed his mechanics? That's my biggest question when it comes to Josh Allen. Who gets the credit? I feel like Brian's getting a lot of credit that should be going to Josh Allen. And look, I have a lot of respect for what Josh Allen has done. But I think I'm going to use my first push. You've used 3. I'm going to use 1 here. I'm going to push this one. Yeah, because Josh Allen has put together, it's a lot similar to like Lamar, right? Where Josh Allen has put together an individual season that's more impressive than anything Baker Mayfield's done in 3 years. But he's also been wildly inconsistent in that time frame, even within this season, right? Where he sometimes has those 50 QBR games, he has those 92, and then like 70, where he's kind of volatile in that way. Now, Baker Mayfield's volatile in a very similar way. It's just, you know what? I'll give it to Buffalo. I don't have a really strong argument yet. Baker has to put together a top 10 or top 5 season to kind of get that. So I'll put Josh Allen over him for the time being, but I'm not on the whole Josh Allen is a top 5 quarterback already train. I feel like we weren't ready to crown Lamar that when he won the MVP. Why would we do the same thing for Josh Allen after one MVP quality? Well, not even MVP quality, but like top level season. I think it was ridiculous he got MVP votes this year over Patrick Mahomes, but
this should have been runaway, like you said, but I can't get over his play in the playoffs. He was not good. Look, he was not good in the playoffs, and they probably should have lost to Baltimore, but Lamar had an even worse game. And that Bills offense just could not move the ball against Baltimore whatsoever. And then they were again bad after they took a 9-0 lead and they just didn't do anything else with it against Kansas City.
And they got the lead off of the fumbled punt return.
That's right. That's right. So I'll take, like you said, I'll take Josh Allen because look, he had a spectacular year. And if we're talking about Baker had a very good year, Josh Allen's year was even better. But both guys have a problem of like the years before that, you left a lot to be desired. Baker probably had a better rookie year, but I'll take Josh Allen. But just by a little. Again, it should be by a lot, but it's only by a little because that playoff run that Josh Allen had, not impressive whatsoever.
Also, we talk about quarterbacks who take terrible sacks. He's the guy. He's the poster boy of the especially in the playoffs where he was just taking like 17, 18. It was like, dude, stop rolling backwards at some point. Like, and it's where his size gets him in trouble. And some of the issues I have with Josh Allen is like, this seems like this is pure, I don't want to say athleticism, but this is like somebody, when you watch Josh Allen, you get the feeling like you're watching a boxer box in a weight class that he is much too big for, right? He looks like a heavyweight in the welterweights, right? And that he is just dominant. It's like Shaq in the early days of Shaq, where he was just so much more dominant and athletic than guys that he can just dominate that way. I wonder how that's going to go as teams kind of scheme up against him better and as he ages and as he tries to not take these 40-yard sacks that he takes consistently. I know that you have to take Josh Allen right now over Baker Mayfield. I honestly, my official is like Josh Allen over Baker Mayfield. I would feel better with Baker Mayfield because I feel like I know what that is more than I know what Josh Allen is. I feel like with Josh Allen, he could have a terrible year next year and regress completely. And, you're kind of just holding the bag, paying $40 million for that dude. With Baker, I feel like, look, it's not going to reach that same peak that Josh Allen is capable of reaching, but I do feel like you'll get consistently 15 to top 8 quarterback play out of him.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think this may be one where we look back after the season. It's like, well, this was a silly conversation. Baker Mayfield stayed on the same level, and Josh Allen fell off an absolute cliff because this is a guy who could very easily revert back to what we saw the last 2 seasons. He certainly he looked much more like that player in the playoffs than he did the MVP caliber player. All right, let's go to one that I know is going to cause some controversy. You've been talking about this player on AFC North Talk. It's a weird one. Deshaun Watson versus Baker Mayfield. Where are you going?
All right, so I don't think Deshaun Watson is a great fit for Kevin Stefanski's offense. I'm just going to put that one out there. I don't think he is. He's not somebody who's been very productive off play action passing. He's not somebody who has a great arm strength. Like in the conversation about Deshaun Watson, and look, he is a top 10 quarterback. There's no doubt about that. I think a lot of things have been forgotten about who Deshaun Watson was and why he fell all the way to 12. Now, was it justified when he goes behind Mitchell Trubisky? No, but there's a reason he did fall all the way there because we talk about him as a generational talent. I'm like, he's a very good quarterback. He's not a generational talent. Like Josh Allen's more of a generational talent or Lamar Jackson's more of a generational talent because they have skill sets that you're like, I've just not seen that before. Deshaun Watson's pretty normal talent base, right? Pretty average arm strength, good runner, but not a great runner. He just has it a lot here mentally. And that's something that you have to consider, right? He can do it in a bunch of different offenses. I'm tempted to use a push here, but look, I'm not going to set the internet on fire. I've never made the argument that Baker Mayfield is better than Deshaun Watson. I'm just saying that Baker Mayfield is going to probably win you the same games in the same amount of games that Deshaun Watson would, given the same circumstances. I just think I think the quarterback level play kind of it's like the law of diminishing returns where, you pay $40 for your upgrade and you get all this stuff and then you pay $70 and then you get less. I think there's a law of diminishing returns there. Now, if I could just flop for free, sure, whatever. I would take Deshaun Watson, right?
Yeah.
But that does not mean I'm trading for Deshaun Watson.
You heard it here first, folks. Quincy Carrier wants to trade Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson. It's a good trade, in my opinion. I would do it as well because I think Deshaun Watson is if we're to remove all the old quarterback, remove Aaron Rodgers from this, remove Tom Brady, remove all the old guys. I think Deshaun Watson's second best young quarterback that we have right now in the league. And I think, the second best young quarterback. Yeah. I mean, quarterbacks under 30, let's say. I think that is Deshaun Watson right now. Look, he's, lots going to get made of the fact that he went 4-12 this year. Bill O'Brien decimated that roster. They traded the best wide receiver in the game for a running back. They took the best wide receiver for the least valuable position. It's like, what if Freddie Kitchens were not only the coach of the Browns, but also the general manager and got personnel decisions for an entire year and could just trade away whoever he wanted.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, and this is going to set people on fire, but it's not my fire to pick up. This is Vach's fire to pick up. Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott? Because I would take Dak over Deshaun.
I would take Deshaun over Dak.
I think Dak's pretty much the same guy, except for he doesn't take the same sacks.
But he's coming off that catastrophic knee injury.
Oh, how many knee injuries has Deshaun Watson come off of?
Not like this. He hasn't missed a whole. Oh, no, he did have an ACL tear. But he's come back from it. The Dak is it's an open question.
It's a bone injury. He's gonna come back. That bone reheals stronger than muscle.
We're doing the opposite of that. Last year, you were the one telling me there's no way Ben comes back from the injury. There's no way. Now I'm here telling you there's no way Dak comes back.
He's not 36 years old.
No, I think Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback for me than Dak Prescott, and Dak has the injury to come back from. Yeah. But I would definitely take. I mean, for the purposes of this, I'm definitely taking Deshaun Watson over Baker Mayfield. Let's get to Russell Wilson. This is one that's realistic. You could get Baker Mayfield for Russ. Russ wants out. Would you do it?
Oh, I have look. I'm not gonna lie. Russ is one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. Like when the Browns were very terrible, right? You talk about 2012 through on. I would just watch Russell Wilson games and just escape from being a Browns fan by watching Russell Wilson just run around there. Now that the Browns are good, I don't watch Russell Wilson as much. And I wonder if he's still the same dude that I think of him in my head. When I think of Russell Wilson, I think, oh, this is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's top 5. So I'm going to just go with that. I love Russ. I still think Russ can do a lot. I think Russ can bring you more success than Baker would right now. And I think that could actually lead to a Super Bowl if you're talking about him having all that talent around him, being able to not have to scramble for his life behind that offensive line. Like I think 1 or 2 seasons of Russ could get you a Super Bowl, but he has been more turnover prone as he's gotten older, and that's something to keep an eye on. But you know, I'm not gonna lie, I have a huge football crush on Russell Wilson, so I'm gonna just stick with Russ right there.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you know, the weird thing, you talk about the interception stuff that he had, the turnover. I mean, you know, remember I stole let Ben cook from the whole Seattle let Russ cook type deal, right? Where they were running the ball so much they wanted to let Russ cook. They finally did. yeah, it might be. But as soon as Russell Wilson went on that interception spree, they switched the offense around. They went to a more run-first attack, and that's why I think Russ wants out, because they have fired Brian Schottenheimer. They want to go to a more run-first attack, and Russell doesn't want that. So you do wonder, I would wonder, if you put Russell Wilson in Stefanski's offense, and Stefanski, I think, is still going to want to be that, you know, run-first type of player. Would Russell Wilson and Stefanski butt heads here? I'm still going to go Russell Wilson, but
I just see Russ like coming off a bunch of play-action boots, and there's the Russell Wilson in my mind, like off of boots.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness!
You know, people talk about People talk about like the magician that Mahomes is. Again, Russell Wilson wasn't doing like Mahomes level stuff, but he was a level below. But like some of the plays that he made at times in his career, you know, again, were the same. You had the same feeling of like, how did that just happen? Like when you're watching Mahomes.
We have officially become old heads. These young fellas talk about this Patrick Mahomes' capability, but they don't know about Russell Wilson in 2013. He used to do the spin move and just run around and just throw the ball 10 yards and find Golden Tate for 15.
Yeah. No, I've accepted my inner boomer. Like that's who I am now. All right, last one. We saved the best for last. My boy, Ryan Tannehill versus Baker Mayfield. The quarterback. See, Ryan Tannehill's a quarterback no one understands. Is he really good? Are we sure he's good? Every time you watch him, you go, all right, this game where he really proves not a good quarterback.
But his advanced numbers are just so wildly good. Like he has such good, like it's wild because when you look at Ryan Tannehill, you think of a guy that's like in that mid class of quarterback, right? Like, okay, he's like in the middle class. You know, he's somebody you would hope to upgrade from. But then you look at his numbers, dude been top 5 for like 3 years in a row. It had 3 years. Yeah. Not just like 1 year. Like it's been a while that he's been good. And also let's remember, this dude played wide receiver, so he's athletic. Now he's in his 30s. But he's the one quarterback that looks like he's still top 5 in that 2012 draft class, and that's including Russell Wilson, right? Like he has played. Well, I don't know if he's played better than Russ, but he's played at least on that same level. And nobody expected that, right? We would not be sitting here thinking in the world that RG3 and Andrew Luck would be out the league, and Ryan Tannehill and Russell Wilson would be the flag holders of that draft class. Like nobody would have took that bet.
Yeah,
he's been really good in the same system. Essentially, like, the Titans pretty much run exactly what the Browns run.
Mm-hmm.
He's been really good in that. Now and he's been really good as a comeback. Like, maybe the thing you would like cliches throw on a guy like Ryan Tannehill was like, oh, well, he's not a guy who can bring you back. He's just, he feeds off the success. No, he's been one of the best fourth quarter comeback quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, especially this year, he was one of the best fourth quarter comeback quarterbacks. And so as crazy as it sounds, like, I don't even think this one's necessarily close. Just as how good Ryan Tannehill has played. Like, you have to take Ryan Tannehill, right? You talk about 2 years of top 5 quarterback play, essentially the same system, which is going to be better supported because the offensive line in Cleveland's better. The wide receivers in Cleveland are better. The running backs in Cleveland are better. He's not learning a new system. Like, if you swap these two, as much as a Baker fan I am, Baker has not put up a top 5 season. Like, I don't think anybody's saying that, right? And Ryan Tannehill has in this offense, and there's really not an argument you can make for Baker Mayfield.
There's one.
Like, what's the argument? Because I would love to hear it.
Head to head, baby.
Head to head. Yeah, he has the one win over him. Yeah, I get that. But, again, I just think the Browns are such a better. Like, I felt like the Browns are a better team than the Titans, right? But if you put Ryan Tannehill in that quarterback room, like, I don't think the result of that game changes if you flip quarterbacks on that game. Like, now mentally, I think of Baker Mayfield because I've seen him do it where he has those comebacks. But I feel like if I were watching the Titans more, I feel the same way about Ryan Tannehill because he's done it multiple times with the Titans. It's just that he's in a weird situation where all the hype goes to his running back, which is a weird one. And Baker's probably going to be in the same situation. Nick Chubb's probably in that same class of running back. But, it's there's no intelligent argument that I can make other than just a pure Browns fan argument that I should go with Baker over him. I'm glad I have to go with Ryan Tannehill.
I'm glad you're making this argument, not me, because I would make the exact same. I would say the exact same things, but you said them first, so you're going to get the hate in the comments. And I'm just going to say, oh yeah, I agree with Quincy. No, I mean, like, he's put together. You talk about the composite numbers over the last 2 seasons. The composite numbers over the last 2 years, if you take his expected points added per play, and then you composite that with his completion percentage over expectations. These are both advanced analytic stats, but he has been the best quarterback in the league for 2 years on using those numbers. Better than Mahomes, better than Rodgers, better than Wilson, better than Watson. All these guys we're talking about. Tannehill's been that guy. Now, I know there'll be people in the comments say that's ridiculous. There's no way he's a better quarterback than Mahomes or even Rodgers. And I will agree with that. In fact, I don't even think he's a better quarterback than Russell Wilson. But you can't deny that he has been a top guy, right? Whether we're talking about him as a top 3 guy or a top 5 guy, we're still talking about him as being in that discussion. Whereas I think Baker is still at the bottom. We're talking about him as a top 10-ish quarterback still at this point in his career. So for that reason, for me, it's a pretty easy one. I'm going to have to go Tannehill.
Yeah, Baker could put together a season next year with him and Odell really get linked up and he throws like 5,000 yards. You're like, okay, Baker's better. But right now, it's like, what argument can I make? That's intelligent, right? Like, there's no argument. I would have to do like a pure upside argument to make this make any sense. And there's really no evidence of an upside being top 5 with Baker Mayfield at this point, right? I don't make that argument that Baker Mayfield's going to grow into a top 5 guy. I think Baker's probably going to be around where he finished this season, where he's like top 10-ish. And I think that's fine. I think that's a good place to have him. But Ryan Tannehill, you got to put respect up where you like, maybe you can discount him because he had bad years in Miami, but like Adam Gase and all those things around Miami, you know what I mean? He's one of those dudes that will make a Carson Wentz trade possible because people will wrongly do the false equivalency of being like, well, Ryan Tannehill got good when he traded. So why not Carson Wentz? Well, Ryan Tannehill didn't put together some of the worst seasons in football history at the quarterback position. But yeah, with Ryan Tannehill, you have to give him that respect. So I think we went Baker. I went with Baker over about we'd have the 3. I think I did like 5 guys in there. So
I think you have him like 8th or 9th total in the league.
Yeah, you probably got him around like 15th,
I got him
12th.
No, 11, 12. So I had him tied with Derek Carr, and I have 10 guys above it. I will say one other thing. If you're writing a comment right now on this channel, okay, and you're trying to make it, here's why Tannehill's not as good, just make sure that comment is not a self-own, okay? Because a lot of the things that you would say about Tannehill, it's because he has this great running game. It's because, just remember what.
Yeah, it's a very similar situation, except for like, if you go piece for piece, like it's undeniable that the Browns have like a better situation offensively, at least.
Well, you could argue AJ Brown's a better. I mean, I guess the one argument is say AJ Brown's a better wide receiver than anyone the Browns have. Although I guess
but he's not so much better than Jarvis Landry that it's like a whole discount.
No,
like AJ Brown is better than Jarvis Landry, and that's mainly what Baker's had in Cleveland. But you still got Nick Chubb, who's as equal to close to Derrick Henry as you can get. Offensive line is definitely better. The tight ends, they're about the same. They have good tight ends in Tennessee.
Jonnu Smith is very good. Yeah,
Jonnu Smith. And I would say the Browns probably have a better coach because the coach is was talking about for the offensive side of the ball because their coach is the offensive system. Arthur Brown was the offensive system.
Arthur Smith,
the FedEx guy. But Arthur Smith was the guy there that ran the offense in Tennessee. So there's more stability guaranteed with the situation Baker Mayfield's in with the offense. There's really, like, when you boil it down, just not trying to be a fan about it, just trying to observe football, there's really no argument you can make, which is wild because 3 years ago you would have said that about Ryan Tannehill. I would have laughed. Like, I think we all would have had a good laugh. When this all started with Ryan Tannehill, when he got traded to Tennessee, we were like, this is not real. But he did that at the end of his Tennessee year. He's continued it this season. It doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. At some point, you got to give the man, like, if this were Baker Mayfield doing this and people didn't believe it, I would say give the man his respect. The proof's on the table. You got to do something. Right.
Well, and I would say this for Browns fans who are trying to say that, Baker's better than Tannehill for these reasons. I would turn that around. When people try to tell Browns fans that, Baker's going to drop off this year, that was a 1-year thing, point to Ryan Tannehill as a reason why. No. People thought that about Tannehill, that when he went into the system where, he could rely on a running game and a coaching staff and whatnot. And he's put up great numbers for 2 years. Baker likely to be in that same situation where he's still going to have a great running game, still going to have a great coach, still going to have everything great around him, and he's going to play well in that system.
I think we forgot one. I didn't put him on the list, but it's a bonus one for those of you guys who stayed to the end of this video. It's a long video. Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo?
I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield on that one. You didn't forget Jimmy Garoppolo. The league forgot Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo out here. I remember he was such a good quarterback. Kyle Shanahan decided he was going to run the ball 60 times at the end of the game. Like, he was like, I'm not going to let Jimmy throw the ball. And then he did let Jimmy throw the ball. And then I think Jimmy threw a pick. But, I think that's another one Colin said, it's unquestionable. You put Jimmy Garoppolo over Baker Mayfield. And that's why I had to cut the video off. I was like, all right. This is designed to make me angry. This is not actual analysis. But thank you guys for sticking with us. If you stuck with us throughout the whole hour, make sure to check out Tony's channel, Steelers Country with Tony Serino. Just put Tony Serino in your search bar. He'll pop up. He has videos up there. He does the Senior Bowl, the Steelers, all that stuff. So stay informed there. And also in the comment section down below, let me know what your Baker Mayfield or the field would look like, who you would have, and who you have the biggest disagreement with either me or Tony with in that packet. Let me know down in the comment section below. Again, Tony, let them know where to find you as well. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. As Quincy said, you can find me on YouTube now. I have a channel, Steeler Country with Tony Serino. So just search my name. I'm on there. And of course, you can find me on Tuesdays with Quincy, AFC North Talk, 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. We are live. We'll be talking free agency and the draft all offseason. Definitely, guys. Check it out. Again, Tony, thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a great day. Have a good night.